Everyone who loves surfing gathers at the beach to watch professionals throw down at the World Championship qualifiers. Many surfers participate for their chance to become pro, but only a few of them can stand. Amongst the newly talented is Fuke, a beast when it comes to concentration with lady killer looks. Aside from him there is the flashy Kaido. People call him the wizard of the waifu board, as he named his board after every boy's dream. In truth, his fast-paced and flexible waifu riding is what makes him exceptional. But surfing isn't about flashy moves or being popular with the ladies. It also has players like the nerdy Yuta, who tends to analyze his moves and believes this method will revolutionize the sport. Yet some surfers play aggressive than others, and Iwana is a great example for this. He lets his young hot blood take over to feel peak adrenaline rush. He's not alone in that department. Mori, who is born to a rich family, gives up his tradition and family business to pursue his dream. He claims that all the money in the world can't buy him the rush he feels while becoming one with the waves. And right now he is doing just that. Lastly, the new kid Masaki, with incredible balance and technique, takes off to showcase his skill. His ability to stay steady in air and water shocks everyone watching. However, things didn't start this way for Masaki. He was born and raised in Ori near the Sun Beach. His daily routine is to wake up at dawn and head down to the beach with his pet named Isakichi. One day during his run on the beach, Masaki sees a surfer conquering the waves. The sunlight blinds him from seeing the person. Yet, the sight alone was enough to captivate and ignite a passion for surfing in his heart. Masaki wants to wait for the surfer to finish and ask their name. However, he needs to attend the first day of the second term. Students around the school are sad that they won't have time for any more romantic adventures. Yet, Masaki is glad to see his friends, especially Tanaka. He has a habit of carrying a small guitar to school and puts everything he wants to say into a song. On top of that, he is a seasoned surfer who can never seem to persuade Masaki into surfing. Despite not taking up the sport, Masaki excitedly tells him about this mysterious surfer at Sun Beach. But before he can finish, the school bell forces him to sit down. Their class teacher walks in and reveals they have a new welcome student. Just like every other anime, the girls are confused why someone would transfer in the middle of the year. However, all of them turn speechless upon seeing Shu, the new transfer student from Hayama. He instantly changes the atmosphere of the class, as all the girls want to ride his wave before the end of middle school. Once the class begins, Masaki tells Tanaka about his encounter with Shu at the Sun Beach this morning. Tanaka finds it strange that Masaki would be this pumped up about surfing but refrains from disturbing the class. He then tells Masaki about this during lunch break, claiming he wants to surf with the new guy. Tanaka believes that an easy way of catching Shu's attention is to use the phrase "the show must go on" in a song together. However, Masaki feels embarrassed whenever Tanaka randomly starts singing a song. However, the song forces Shu to approach them, claiming the phrase they learned today was pretty good. Once he breaks the ice, Masaki feels more comfortable introducing himself and Tanaka. As the three of them walk home together, Masaki reveals that Tanaka is a seasoned surfer just like him. Before Tanaka can say something, Masaki comes forward, saying he'll take him on a tour around town. At this point, Tanaka wonders if Masaki has gone to the dark side and joined the rainbows. Yet, he still lets the boy have his fun. Their first stop is Fantasy Island, a shop filled with everything a surfer would or might need to conquer the waves. Masaki has been there a few times before with Tanaka, but for some reason, things seem different to him today. Even the hot store lady is surprised that Masaki has graced them with his presence. But she doesn't pull his leg to escort a new customer to the shop. During their conversation, Tanaka mentions that Masaki can't swim, and this is one of the reasons he doesn't surf. However, today, Masaki asks them to take him along with them. All of them rush to their house, but Masaki, drowned in excitement, doesn't even eat his food properly and leaves. His mother and little sister Sakura claim that he's always been childish, yet they don't mind this trait of his. Later that evening, Tanaka firsthand sees how good Shu is with surfing. His balance and moves are slick, revealing that he's the real deal. Aside from the fact that Shu is an exceptional surfer, Tanaka is interested in why Masaki joined them at the beach. Apparently, he's been asking him to come with him to the Sun Beach for months. However, Masaki always made up an excuse or avoided the question. Quite honestly, even Masaki doesn't know the answer to his question. He just felt something different inside after watching Shu surf. Suddenly, he wanted to be just like him and fly high with the waves. Still, he can't just tell this to Tanaka out loud. So, he decides to make a bullshit story. But before he says anything, Shu comes and asks if Masaki wants to surf. Tanaka immediately reminds him that Masaki can't swim. However, Masaki ignores this fact and accepts the offer. Up first, Shu teaches him the art of pedaling with a proper form. He fixes his wrist angle and center of gravity to make sure that Masaki doesn't fall from the surfboard. After that, he teaches him the correct way to stand on the board. Once his training is over, Shu pushes him to surf in the water. Naturally, Masaki is hesitant to enter the ocean without knowing how to swim. However, he still wants to copy Shu's moves. Tanaka, though, tells him to be realistic. He reveals that just standing on the board might take months. Still, he gives Masaki the final push needed to move forward. At first, he skillfully balances on the board, leaving Shu surprised. This is when Tanaka reveals that Masaki's father is a construction worker. Working with him has helped Masaki improve his balance and strengthen his core muscles. Soon, the big wave approaches the three friends. Shu turns Masaki in the opposite direction and gets ready to catch him if something goes wrong. However, much to their shock, Masaki stands on the board on his first try and rides a wave. His inexperience and lack of concentration make him fall off, but still Shu and Tanaka can't believe that a newbie managed to ride a wave on his first try. The boys then head down to the public bath to rinse the salt water off their body. Shu mentions that his older brother taught him how to surf, but due to some personal circumstances, he had to quit the sport. Tanaka understands his intentions and refrains from prying into his family matters. However, Masaki is the least bit interested in their conversation. He is busy reminiscing about the time he successfully rode the wave. The boys splash a handful of water on his face to bring him back to earth. They think he will apologize for spacing out, but instead, Masaki invites them to practice early in the morning before school. However, he goes to the sun beach as soon as dawn arrives and starts practicing. At first, Masaki believed that things would go smoothly as they did yesterday. Yet, even after following the same steps as yesterday, he can't seem to balance himself on the board. He assumes the angle of his wrists, the height of his chin, and his body stretch are all bent out of shape. Unfortunately, he can't successfully stand on the board even after fixing those mistakes. Soon, Shu and Tanaka come to the beach only to find Masaki drenched in water. They realize he's been practicing till dawn and advise him to take things slow. However, the overly enthusiastic newbie thinks he will be fine. Despite this, he fails to ride the wave, and eventually ends up calling it a day. In the afternoon, the boys return to Fantasy Island to clean their surfboards. Shoko, the hot shop lady, teaches Masaki how to clean his board. She reveals that salt water can erode the screws holding the board together. Not only that, he needs to check his board for cracks, otherwise the salt water will worsen the damage. After a bit of thinking, Masaki decides to buy the board and his swimsuit from the shop. The Wonder also gives him a special prize to support his newfound interest in surfing. Buying the board feels like riding his cycle for the first time. But before that, he spends hours reading about his potential mistakes. Naturally, Masaki doesn't wait to return to the sun beach to apply the book's content. This time, he focuses on stretching his arm a little further and paddling faster. Unfortunately, even with those little tweaks, Masaki fails to ride the board and falls off. With one more failure, Masaki hits the book and realizes that his speed might be the real problem behind his falls. This time he feels as if he's cracked the code and can successfully ride a wave. Though, his motivation dies when a big wave throws him down again. Shu and Tanaka keep his morale up, reminding him that surfing isn't easy. Although Masaki never worked hard in his life, he doesn't give up surfing. The boys spend the next year practicing and getting to know each other. To celebrate their friendship, Masaki and his sister Sakura throw Shu his 15th birthday party. While everyone eats, Shu mentions that he never had a birthday party due to his complicated family circumstances. Masaki, however, reveals they celebrate birthdays every year and promise to include Shu in all of them. Later that day, the boys hit the sun beach for Masaki to practice his surfing. Shu and Tanaka are impressed by Masaki's improvement in 1 year. He even manages to perform a floater but can't maintain his balance for long. Once he returns to the shore, Masaki promises to work harder and surpass Shu. Eventually, the boys head down to the public bath for their usual rinsing. During this time, Shu mentions Masaki's ultimate weakness. He tells Masaki that not every wave is meant for a surfer. They must carefully choose the perfect wave and conquer it. Unfortunately, Masaki disregards his advice as nothing but being scared to surf any wave. From that day onward, Masaki spent hours practicing at the sun beach. He could feel himself getting better little by little, and the fun just kept increasing with every wave he surfed with Tanaka and Shu. Masaki wishes that their time together will last forever. However, his dreams are shattered into pieces as he finds Tanaka talking to the career counselor about his future goals. Apparently, Tanaka wants to follow in his father's footsteps and become a researcher in Hawaii. The teacher naturally advises him to improve his English skills. Tanaka assures him that he will work hard to achieve his goals. But instead of feeling happy for his friend, Masaki is jealous that Tanaka has decided on his future. Suddenly, Masaki notices a storm is brewing with strong winds perfect for offshore surfing. However, Shu refuses to indulge his reckless behavior. Yet, none of them notice that Masaki is worried about their future together, and so they let Masaki out of their sight. Unexpectedly, Masaki ignores Shu's warning and heads down to the beach. The aggressive waves strike fear in his heart for a moment, but Masaki is hell-bent on surfing without a break. He idiotically jumps into the water and paddles towards a big wave. However, the strong winds turn things upside down, causing him to fall off his board. Masaki drowns in the ocean and thinks it's the end of him. Yet, before he faints, Masaki sees Shu approaching him. He carries him to the shore, revealing that Masaki took in a lot of water. He forcefully removes all the water from Masaki's body until he wakes up, though Shu doesn't feel sorry for what happened. Instead, he yells at Masaki for being reckless. He is happy that his friends love surfing. However, he always told Masaki to act with caution. Later in the bath, Shu explains that surfing is a sport close to heaven. This is a famous saying used by everyone in the sport. They train relentlessly to master the waves, but the ocean can turn on them anytime. Eventually, Masaki opens up about his feelings, revealing he overheard the teacher's conversation with Tanaka. He admires him for having a life goal and working towards. Still, he always thought they would surf together their entire lives, and the thought of growing apart shocked him. However, Shu claims they will be surfing in the same ocean even if they are apart. The sea will tell them wherever everyone is and how they are doing. Besides, they have a lot of time before graduation to make new memories. Speaking of memories, Shu reminds them about the competition being held next summer. The boys decide they will enter the tournament and rise above the competition. Before knowing about the competition, Masaki used to feel nervous about things like his high school entrance exam. But ever since he started surfing, the days of the present and the future seem shiny to him. Things like exams or the future are meaningless, as Masaki only thinks about riding the waves. This attitude of his ends when the Forest Cup competition arrives at his doorstep. Masaki learns a unique move from surfing magazines and YouTube. Despite his sentiment to try the move, he knows that executing wouldn't be easy with an audience watching. Still, he spends the night imagining a way to finish the move with swagger. The following morning, the boys head to the beach only to find a ceremony being held by the surfing committee. However, before it starts, Masaki openly challenges Shu and Tanaka, claiming he will trash them with his accumulated skills over the last year. The boys, though, remind him that 1 year doesn't mean shit in the world of surfing. But before this argument gets heated, the head of committee Mori Williams steps on the stage to address the crowd. While he speaks, Tanaka reveals that Mori is the son of a billionaire and has 1,000 surfboards in his collection. The amount in his collection overwhelms Masaki to open his mouth and interrupt the ceremony. However, Mori lets this slide and continues to speak. He reveals the Forest Cup competition is held all across Japan. Its main goal is to popularize surfing with the new generation and find talented surfers that are meant for the world stage. With that said, he announces that this competition will be held with the man-on-man priority rules. This means that 2 surfers will enter the water simultaneously, and the first one to exit a wave will gain an advantage. Kaido is the first one to gain this advantage during the first round. However, he stays calm and waits for the perfect wave to come. This shows that selecting waves is just as important as surfing on them. Kaido executes a brilliant and clean move that earns him enough points to advance to round 2. The audience watching his performance didn't catch the name of his move but still thought it was cool. Meanwhile, Masaki is overwhelmed by the talent in this competition and wonders if his efforts will pay off. However, he doesn't have that much time to think as round 2 is about to begin. Once they approach the shore, Tanaka slaps Masaki on his back, sensing that he's under a lot of nerves. Though Masaki's outward appearance doesn't reveal what he's feeling inside. He jokes with Tanaka, claiming that he's crazy. But as he steps into the water, the nerves start to hit him hard. Luckily, Shu is present by his side, reminding him he needs to focus on his practice. His words help Masaki calm down and remember all of the effort he has put for this one moment. Eventually, the 2 surfers enter the water with Masaki gaining priority. His mother decides to cheer for him from the sidelines, but Sakura tells her that he can't hear anything. They just need to shut up and watch. Back in the ocean, everyone thinks that Masaki would rush into things being a newbie. However, he doesn't go for the first 2 waves. This tells Shu and Tanaka that Masaki has grown a lot. After 5 minutes of waiting, Masaki finally decides to ride the wave. His incredible sense of balance makes it easier for him to stand and perform a clean move. The textbook move earns him a lot of points, so Masaki wins the first round. Masaki jumps up and down due to the excitement of winning. On top of that, Masaki's performance even catches the attention of Fuke, another rich kid who lives for surfing. After the initial rounds, Shu and Tanaka rise above the competition to prove that they are ones to look out for. Their smooth sailing on the waves reveals they have been practicing for a long time. Masaki, however, doesn't want him to fall behind his friends despite their superior experience in the sport. Although his determination is through the roof, Masaki must defeat Kaido in round 2. Before the match begins, Masaki mentions that Kaido's habit of naming his moves is pretty dope. Unexpectedly, he shares the same sentiment about Masaki wanting to win the tournament. With mutual respect for each other, they decide to give it their all in a friendly match. At first, everyone assumed that Masaki would take priority once again, but Kaido proves to be faster and steals the spotlight. Kaido then executes a few crazy flips that earns him a considerable lead. Masaki sure is impressed by his opponent, yet, deep down, he knows that he must surpass him by performing an outstanding move himself. While riding an upcoming wave, Masaki's mind is suddenly flooded with different ideas. However, they prove to be a distraction which becomes Masaki's downfall, resulting in his loss. Still, he gets one more chance to earn 8 points and take back the lead. Unfortunately, Masaki bites more than he can chew, trying to execute a move he hadn't even practiced. In the end, he falls again and drops out of the tournament in the second round. Eventually, Masaki realizes that dreaming about battling Shu in the semi-finals or winning the tournament is still far-fetched. He must return to the Sun Beach tomorrow to practice even harder. Despite his loss, the competition is something that can never stop. Shu goes against a nerdy surfer named Yuta in round 2. Yuta tends to overanalyze everything and move according to data. He thinks that his victory is certain. However, Shu shocks Yuta by pulling a textbook move on a high wave. As he fixes his spot in the semis, Shu asks Tanaka to get serious and meet him in the finals. The free-spirited surfer reminds him that competition isn't something he's interested in. Still, Shu insists that there is no one worthy of facing him in the finals. This newfound motivation forces both of them to win their respective semi-finals and reach the final. Meanwhile, Masaki closely watches the two of them stand side by side in the finals. Part of him feels jealous, but the other part feels proud that his best friend made it to the finals. In the end, he displays a positive attitude, wishing both of his best friends the best of luck. The commentators announce that the time limit will remain the same even in the final rounds. With that in mind, Shu and Tanaka rush to gain priority. The audience, however, is torn between supporting either of them since both of them are valuable members of Orai's surfing community. Yet no matter who wins, they will welcome them with open arms. Meanwhile, in the sea, Tanaka successfully gains priority over Shu. Yet he doesn't rush to ride a wave. Unexpectedly, this is the first time anyone has seen him hungry for a win. Shu also notices his determination and appreciates him getting to the finals. Tanaka, though, thinks there's nothing he should thank him for, as he always wanted to battle Shu in a one-on-one match. During their conversation, the offshore winds calm down a little, creating waves suitable for a surfer. After 8 minutes of watching the sea, Tanaka finally chooses the perfect wave. His perfect body control and managers earn him a considerable lead. Though, the audience expects Shu to surpass his performance. As expected, he lives up to his title of the best surfer at Sun Beach by brilliantly maneuvering on top of the wave. Although people thought that Shu would take the lead, his point gap isn't something he can win with. Still, Shu gains the priority in the second run, which turns the odds in his favor. Despite this, he doesn't rush into things and lets a few good waves pass. Tanaka realizes that Shu has developed a keen eye for waves and their potential, but the audience watching thinks that he might be nervous. However, Shu soon proves them wrong by executing a maneuver most pros wouldn't attempt in the final round. Unfortunately, Tanaka doesn't leave any room for mistakes and catches up to Shu in his second run. Over on the sidelines, Yuta, who is impressed by Masaki's sense of balance, sees that his skin is turning pale. He assumes that it is because he couldn't make it to the finals alongside Shu. But instead of soothing his pain, he tells him to focus on the match. Even after 2 runs, the match officials can't decide who will win this match, leaving Tanaka and Shu no choice but to compete once again. However, people think that with the clock running out, Tanaka will rush his priority and fail. Much to their surprise, he lets a wave pass multiple times. His demeanor makes people believe that he's given up. But the owner of Fantasy Island reveals that Tanaka knows Orai's ocean from the inside out. He believes that Tanaka is waiting for the best wave and will wait till the last second to ride it. Just as expected, a giant wave comes their way after a few swells. This is the moment when Tanaka paddles forward. But with only 20 seconds remaining on the clock, the officials allow Shu to ride the wave as well. These two realize that this is the best wave of the year and letting this chance slide will be foolish. Tanaka and Shu perform opposite maneuvers to show their skills on the waves. However, Tanaka fails to stick the landing. Despite this, the gap in their points is so thin that none of the audience members can predict the winner. All Yuta and the others can do is applaud both of their efforts. While everyone celebrates, Bill turns to Fuke and asks his thoughts on the competition. Bill believes that these new rivals will shake up the surfing world. It will only make things more interesting moving forward. Fuke, however, is not as optimistic as his billionaire friend. Still, he decides to bet on the new generation because his friend believes in them. As the sun begins to set, the officials announce that Shu is the winner of this year's Forest Cup. The last landing was the only thing that gave him an edge over Tanaka's performance. But their feelings aside, Masaki is the one who feels the happiest. Seeing them on that stage makes him realize he needs to work much harder. Kaido, on the other hand, believes that Shu has the potential to represent Japan on the world stage. His talents and skills are similar to Sally, a man who rose from Orai and achieved great things in front of the world. Kaido's words finally inspire Masaki to set his life goal and dream to be a surfer who represents Japan alongside Shu. At first, Masaki assumes Yuta and Kaido would laugh at his outburst, but unexpectedly, they have the same goal in mind. They put their hands on one another, promising to improve their skills for the world stage. Suddenly, Shu and Tanaka join this little rivalry session. The hot blondie can't aim for anything lower now that he's shown his real skill. Tanaka also thinks that competing is not as bad as he thought. He puts his free sure bullshit aside and joins the promise. To make things more interesting, even Mori and Iwana join the fun, creating a friendship that will be irreplaceable throughout their lifetime. Months after the competition, the boys prepare for their final exams. The teacher quotes one of Shakespeare's eternal lines, "The only medicine for the miserable is hope." This is very true as the boys hope the class and the rain will end soon. Later that day, the boys head down to Fantasy Island to pick new wetsuits. Although the price there sends Masaki into deep shock, he realizes he needs to find a part-time job once in high school. But right now choosing a school is his greatest dilemma. Naturally, he wants to attend high school with his best friend Shu. However, Yuta and the others invited him over to their Shonan. They told him that the waves there are much different from Orai, and he can use the experience. Yet, those words aren't enough to help him make a decision that quickly. Eventually, Tanaka and Shu try to help sort this out. They ask if Masaki's parents are okay with him going off to Shonan. Unexpectedly, his parents are willing to support his decision as long as it's not illegal. Shu tells Masaki that he is very lucky to have a family that supports his decision. He wishes that his family would be as normal as his. Unfortunately, he can't leave Orai or reveal his family situation. The atmosphere quickly tenses up, as both Tanaka and Masaki notice that something is wrong with Shu. Still, the boys can't push him to speak about his troubles. All they can do is walk him to his house, ensuring Shu's safety. The uneasiness in their thoughts gets heavier as the storm, but Masaki can't do anything but visit the sun beach. Unlike before, he doesn't waltz in the wild waves and decides to return home. Yet, at that moment, his dog starts barking, indicating there is someone in the sea. Suddenly, a broken surfboard flies out of the water. This sight tells Masaki that the worst he feared has happened. An entire year passes after Shu's tragic death on the stormy night, and life continues like normal for most people. However, Masaki doesn't live life as he used to. He leaves his habit of waking up at dawn and heading to the sun beach for a more relaxed sleep. Now, he wakes up right before school and leaves without talking to his parents. Everyone finds his behavior odd, but none dare to say anything. Even Tanaka doesn't mention the incident in front of Masaki, though little things like the teacher calling everyone's names gives Masaki a painful reminder of his friend's death. Still, with nowhere left to run, he accepts the pain and sits through class. Yet, unlike before, Masaki isn't the least bit interested in his teacher or Shakespeare. All of their daily rituals, like walking back together with his friends and visiting Fantasy Island, become fond memories. Shoko and the shop owner are tempted to invite him over but are hesitant that their words might hurt Masaki. Still, despite everything, Masaki went through. He fulfills his responsibility towards his pet, but instead of taking him to the beach, he forces the dog to walk to their middle school. His dog, however, slips past Masaki's grip, forcing him to see the sun beach once again. Tanaka finds it strange that Masaki would visit the beach after what happened. Yet, he tries to take advantage of this coincidence to get him back into surfing. He starts describing the quality of the waves and even goes for a spin. Still, despite his hatred of the ocean, Masaki can't stay away for much longer. He visits the Sun Beach daily but leaves after watching the tides. The stormy nights are the worst of them all. The sound of thunder and heavy rain keeps reminding him of the dreadful night. However, Masaki somehow gets through it all without anyone's help. One night, he visits Sun Beach at midnight when the waves are calmer than ever before. He drifts his surfboard into the ocean, claiming he doesn't need it anymore. Yet, he can't let go of the pain and sorrow. Suddenly, amidst all of his thoughts, a giant wave pushes him down to the seabed. Masaki uses this moment to remember the first time Shu came to save him from drowning. But unexpectedly, he fails to hold his breath for long, sinks even deeper. This time, Tanaka comes to the rescue and pulls him up. He jokingly mentions that Masaki isn't dressed for a late night surf. Masaki stays quiet for a few minutes, reminiscing about the times they spent together as friends. He then asks Tanaka why Shu would surf on a stormy night. Originally, he was the one who scolded Masaki for acting reckless. However, in the end, Shu disregarded his own words and did the unthinkable. What's worse is Masaki's guilt for not noticing Shu's situation. He wanted to share his friend's burden, but now he wonders if she didn't believe in their friendship. All of these things are meaningless, and so the only thing Masaki can do is hate surfing. Yet, even doing that proves to be difficult, as before he knows that Masaki is tempted to jump into the ocean. But he doesn't know if he should play a sport that took Shu away from them. Unexpectedly, Tanaka is also torn by this very same thought. If surfing was the thing that took Shu away, it was also what brought them together. He reminds Masaki that Shu told them the show must go on. He can't give up surfing because it is the only thing that reminds him of Shu. The waves in the ocean tell him about Shu and make him feel like they are together. Ultimately, Shu would be sad if they stopped surfing. Masaki tears up from his words and puts his head down in pain. However, he is not the only one mourning Shu's death. Unexpectedly, everyone who once made a promise with Shu to conquer the world stage arrives from Shonan. They want to surf in Orai's ocean to honor Shu's memory, and watching them recreate Shu's Forest Cup performance forces Tanaka and Masaki to join in. Sakura and his mother worry that Masaki and Tanaka might not be able to surf. However, the shop owner assures them they will be fine, since all of them are talented surfers. Although her mother's worry was not baseless, Masaki caught a cold after surfing without his wetsuit. After getting over his loss, Masaki passes his final year exam and graduates from middle school. Their teacher sobs while he and Tanaka receive their medals. He can't believe both of them will move on with their lives. Yet, little does he know that Masaki and Tanaka want to honor their promise with Shu. Masaki even accepts Yuta's invitation to study in Shonan and learn to surf alongside them. He decides to leave Orai a few months early to get used to Shannon's waves. His sister and mother, however, still treat him like a boy, wondering if he can even jump on the right train. Tanaka also joins the fun and starts teasing him. But jokes aside, he is glad Masaki is moving on with his life. Unexpectedly, he is also leaving for Hawaii in 2 weeks. The term there starts in August, but Tanaka wants to use the extra time to surf in Hawaii's ocean. With their goals set in stone, Masaki and Tanaka wish good luck to each other and promise they will meet again soon. During his journey, he remembers all the time Shu and Tanaka spent with him. Yet, instead of being sad, Masaki is thrilled that surfing and Shu changed his life forever. Once the train reaches Shonan, Masaki is greeted by Yuta and Iwama. They want to escort him to his new boarding house. However, the ocean catches his attention, and thus, before heading to the house, Masaki jumps into the ocean. He promises to look beyond his loss and grief to ride a wave to his future. He believes that this will help him feel Shu's presence and honor the promise they once made. Masaki quickly gets accustomed to living life in Shonan. He wakes up at 5 every day and chats with Tanaka before heading to the beach. The waves seem taller than Orai's Sun Beach, which excites him. However, by the time Masaki gets to the beach, the waves disappear into nothingness. Yuta scolds Masaki for being late. They were supposed to meet on the beach at 5, but his royal bum decided that he'll wake up around that time. As a result, they lost all the good waves to surf. Masaki can't believe that the waves disappeared in an instant. But the boys refer to this as Shonan magic. Sometimes the waves are 3 meters or taller, while other times the ocean is as calm as a broken man. In fact, there was a competition held in the 90 seconds that took advantage of these high tides. The committee waited for 24 years before the next competition was held again. The competition requires waves at least 3 meters tall, but that doesn't happen every day. Masaki, however, doesn't want to wait 24 years. He wants to surf now, otherwise his mind might go crazy. In the end, the boys can do nothing but head to school without surfing. Yet, the only thing on Masaki's mind is figuring out a way to surf on low tides. Unbeknownst to him, the teacher walks up on him and finds him doodling. He advises him to focus on his class instead of the waves, otherwise he might commit suicide from poverty later on his life. As the entire class laughs at him, Masaki thinks that living life in Shonan like this might be impossible. Iwana on the other side notices his distress but refrains from saying anything. He knows that Masaki's mind will change once the waves rise. Later that evening, the boys head down to the beach with the boys. However, two girls block Masaki's way to Hammer. This allows him to talk with the girls. But Iwana is pissed that he forced them to wait for his stupid side quests. Their entire journey from then on becomes awkward. However, Yuta tries to calm the situation. He tells Masaki that Iwana is similar to him in many regards. He has an undying passion for surfing and gets pissed whenever the boys are not on time. The reason for this goes back a few years when Iwana used to play baseball. He was the ace of the team with a lot riding on his shoulders. In every match, people expected him to pull through for the team. But then in a tragic turn of events, Iwana injured his elbow and was forced to quit. Luckily, he found his way back into the world through surfing. Yet his skills weren't on par with the boys who had been surfing since childhood. And so naturally, Iwana had to practice harder than anyone else to catch up with the crowd. He even takes things to the extreme by tying weights to himself and running on the seafloor. This helps strengthen his core to withstand any wave that might throw him off balance. Masaki is impressed by his determination and decides to work as hard as him. But even after the hardcore workout, the boys don't catch high waves and return home disappointed. Luckily, Tadao, the owner of their boarding house, cheers everyone with his high-quality cooking. Masaki immediately forgets his manners and starts ordering him for seconds. His shameless attitude towards the host upsets Iwana. Still, he gives Masaki the benefit of the doubt that he is helping with the other chores. However, the only thing Masaki does around the house is take Hammer for a walk. Naturally, Iwana is extremely upset about his behavior. Yet instead of crying on deaf ears, he orders everyone to clean the house after dinner. While everyone is busy doing chores, Masaki finds Tadao sharpening a surfboard in his workshop. In truth, he is a legendary board sharpener who only works with pro. Masaki is completely starstruck by his concentration, and hence, he wants him to sharpen his surfboard as well. Tadao doesn't mind doing it but claims it would cost him a lot of money. In fact, he will work on any surfboard, whether it's for an amateur or a pro, as long as they can afford his services. Still, he advises him to use the off-the-shelf product for the time being. But Masaki naively thinks that his board isn't suited for Shannon's waves. Yet, both Tadao and Yuta, who have been overhearing their conversation, know that Masaki is wrong in his assessment. Eventually, Masaki calls Tanaka for his advice, but the conversation changes from asking for help to complaining about his life. Yet, Tanaka doesn't agree with anything he says, as Shonan is one of the closest places to the world stage. It is filled with pro surfers and teams who constantly hunt for new talent. This is also one of the reasons why Tadao chose to stay there. Once Masaki realizes that Tanaka is not on his side, he shifts the conversation, asking about the waves in Hawaii. Naturally, the waves there are always tall and perfect for surfers, which is why Tanaka decided to study there in the first place. The boys spend a little more time talking about waves and then go to bed. After nearly overthinking himself to heaven, Masaki sets his alarm for 4:30 and decides he'll be the first crab on the beach. However, the boys are much more disciplined than him. Being at the beach at 5 means they should be there 1 hour early. Although Yuta doesn't mind Masaki being a little late, Iwana loses his mind over his laziness. He tells Masaki that he being late is disrespectful to them, Tadao, and Shonan itself. As things stand, people think that surfers like them are wasting their time and are called punks. Masaki's lack of attention, flirting, and God knows what not just worsens the situation for surfers in Shonan. Iwana tells Masaki that Masaki can only earn his respect and continue living at Tadao's place if he fights him in a surfing match. At first, the newbie fails to ride Shonan's short waves and reverts back to making excuses. However, Iwana proves him wrong by gaining momentum even on a bad wave. This tells Masaki that every wave is different and must be approached differently. Once he understands the concept, Masaki surpasses Iwana's speed due to his incredible balance and proves he's a real surfer. And unexpectedly, watching them surf reminds Yuta of the day he first met Iwana. It was shortly after his elbow injury that Iwana was tempted to disregard the doctor's advice and resume practicing again. However, all the people in the park looked at him with pity, making him realize that his baseball playing days were truly over. However, Yuta didn't judge him for his talent on the court. He advised him to try surfing and let the ocean guide him to a better future. That day led to a great surfer being born in Shonan with an undying passion for the sport. Once the boys finish, Masaki mentions that he has befriended Shonan's ocean. Yet, he still thinks that Orai's ocean is the best. This causes a fight between him and Iwana. However, Yuta knows that a surfer's love for his hometown is something that can never change, and so he stays away from taking anyone's side. Later that evening, Tadao finds Masaki unknowingly watching Hayama's lights from the beach. Once Tadao tells him about them, it reminds him of Shu. After all this time, Masaki still believes that Shu is watching him from afar and wants him to be the best surfer in the world. After seeing Masaki improve in front of his eyes, Yuta decides he will also give it his all. But first, he needs to read about Shonan's weather forecast and upload the data on his app. Afterwards, he jumps into the ocean to practice before anyone else. Meanwhile, Masaki gets a notification on his phone from Yuta's app, telling him that the waves will rise as the sun goes down. He rushes out of bed and leaves for the beach without eating breakfast. The boys quickly meet up in the sea, not knowing that Yuta had already been practicing for hours. Once they finish their early practice run, the boys return to the boarding house for breakfast. Unexpectedly, Tadao cooked 3 bowls of shirasu, which is Yuta's favorite dish. Still, Masaki and Iwana don't hold back from fighting for the biggest bowl. However, as the boys bicker, Yuta swiftly steals the bowl and starts eating. Plus, he states random facts about shirasu that fry everyone's brain at the dinner table. In the end, Masaki and Iwana change the topic, realizing they can't beat Yuta when it comes to shiatsu. Unlike before, Yuta doesn't enjoy his food slowly but chugs it down as fast as possible. He also offers to pay for the meal, but Tadao tells him the meal is on him. Unexpectedly, Yuta doesn't argue like he used to and leaves without saying a word. For a moment, everyone finds his behavior weird. Yet, no one says anything until Masaki points out that Yuta left 1 grain of shirasu in the bowl. This surprises everyone as Yuta never wastes food, let alone a bowl of his favorite meal. Iwana doesn't take that seriously, but Masaki finds it strange. His suspicion is further solidified when he sees Yuta twitching on his surfboard. This causes him to fall off and hit the sea. Masaki goes on high alert after this, as he doesn't want to repeat his mistakes. He goes back to the boarding house to talk about Yuta's past with Tadao. He learns that Yuta was born in a family of surfers. Both his parents own a surfer shop and were active surfers back in the day. This means that Yuta has been surfing ever since he was a kid. However, this meant that everyone's expectations were always on him. Tadao explains that Yuta has always been under a lot of pressure. Even after having the most experienced person in their group, he thinks his skills are falling behind. And so, he spends every minute of the day trying to get out of the slump. Unexpectedly, Tadao's prediction hits right on the money. Every time Yuta is alone in his room, he rewatches the footage from past competitions and merges his style with the best. The overall data suggests that Yuta should be the best surfer in Japan. Yet, his practical skills are nowhere close. In the end, he starts to think that he's finally reached his limit. From that day onward, Yuta loses interest in everything. He even disregards school as nothing but a nuisance. However, Masaki continues trying to force him to share his burdens. He even acts like a dog who loves heavy metal music to catch his attention. Once that fails, Masaki offers to buy him a deep-fried snack after school. Despite accepting the gesture, Yuta doesn't talk the entire way. He just warns Masaki not to eat his food in a dark alley, otherwise it might get stolen. However, Masaki disregards his warning and opens his food only to get it stolen by a bird. The boys then surf in the sea for a while. Masaki tries to execute some extra maneuvers than usual but falls off the board. Yuta, on the other hand, doesn't even step in the water. He just watches from the sidelines, revealing that Masaki's weakness is his lack of concentration. Eventually, he stops beating around the bush and asks why Masaki is suddenly interested in spending time with a nerd. Once the ice breaks, Masaki reveals he fears Yuta might do something as stupid as Shu. Despite not having enough experience with surfing, he wants Yuta to share his burdens. Together they might help him get out of the slums. However, the nerd refuses to say anything but still appreciates Masaki's concern for his safety. After their conversation at the beach, Yuta takes a break from school. Masaki worries that his insensitive attitude towards the situation might have caused this decision. Still, they are glad that he has been updating his app even while stuck in his room. With nothing left to do, Tadao assures them that Yuta will recover and just needs time. Unexpectedly, the situation doesn't turn out as he predicted, as one night, Yuta calls him, claiming he's going to look for a part aside from surfing. The following morning, Yuta takes a train to the mountains and decides to spend a few days away from the world. Everyone receives a notification from Yuta on their app, but instead of the weather updates, it's an apology for not being able to keep his promise with everyone. Masaki rushes out of his room to ask Tadao if he knows anything about his decision. He reveals that Yuta called and told him that he was going to quit surfing last night. This makes Masaki panic even more, as he fears that Shu's tragedy might befall them once again. He borrows Yuta's childhood surfboard from Tadao to visit his grandmother in the mountains. While struggling to find the address, Masaki sends Yuta a video of Shu's performance in the Forest Cup. Yuta doesn't understand what to make of it since he's already watched and analyzed the video. Still, Masaki wants him to watch it 100 times. In due time, Masaki finally found the house with Yuta sitting inside. He tells Yuta that he failed to analyze Shu's smile during the competition. He always had fun when surfing, but Yuta's face for the past few days indicated that surfing was boring and stressful. His words help Yuta realize that his problem lies in the emotional aspect of the sport. He always feels stressed out, thinking his skills aren't on par with natural talents like Shu. However, he should have enjoyed himself. Plus, after seeing his old surfboard, Yuta remembers the time he didn't care about remembering the name of his moves or choosing the right waves. He relives those moments and completely let go of logic to reconnect with Shonan's ocean like he once did back in his childhood. Later that evening, the committee head Mori arrives at their doorstep to inform them about the Forest Cup in Chiba. He reveals that the solitary genius Fukurindu will also be participating. Naturally, just hearing about powerful rivals gets their blood pumping. However, instead of feeling fear, the boys are looking forward to taking Fuke's title. Luckily for them, summer vacations arrive right on time for everyone to practice for the Forest Cup. Masaki forgets about school, and now it's all about practice. He intends to improve his skills to make up for his weak performance at the competition in Orai. Masaki carries this determination to spark a little bit of shonen magic in the sea. However, his world is turned upside down when he sees a familiar surfboard from afar. Naturally, Kaido's Mamoru surfboard is so unique that it can't be mistaken, especially by Masaki. Still, he doesn't know the reason behind his surprise visit, and so, he quickly jumps in the ocean to say hello. Their meeting is like two childhood friends reuniting after ages. But unexpectedly, Kaido didn't come to speed his entire summer vacation at Shonan. He only wants to attend an upcoming Mamoru fan meet. Still, he thought surfing with the boys would be a nice change of pace from his boring life in the big city. Masaki is kind of disappointed he won't be here for long. However, for the time being, he forgets about everything and focuses on surfing. Later that evening, Kaido joins the boys for dinner and gifts them a box full of his city's favorite treat. While they eat, Masaki mentions that he started watching Magical Girl Mamoru for Kaido's sake. His sister Sakura also loved the series while she was a child but doesn't watch it anymore. Kaido, however, believes that Magical Girl Mamoru is an anime for all ages. They use the same lead in different stores, creating an eternal concept. Masaki, though, tells him to save his excitement and focus for the upcoming Forest Cup. He claims that he will defeat Kaido to make up for his loss in Orai. Kaido's confidence is at an all-time high until he wakes up the following morning and learns that Magical Mamoru is ending this year. Suddenly, his will to do anything in life disappears. Masaki and the others, despite not knowing much about the industry, remind him that there are no official announcements yet. However, Kaido believes that the latest title and the foreshadowing hint that this news might be true. Still, Yuta reminds him there is a difference between theories and facts, and he should just wait for an official announcement before making up his mind. Right now, they think everyone should focus on preparing for the competition. What Yuta and Masaki say makes total sense, but Kaido can't wrap his head around the news. The waves take advantage of his lack of concentration and wash him away to the shore. Masaki tries to lift his mood, but Kaido doesn't want to listen to anything. He just straight up leaves without saying a single word. Suddenly, Masaki hears a pup barking from behind. Strangely, it reminds of his pet dog back home. Unbeknownst to him, it is the same dog, but Masaki doesn't realize this until it jumps at him. Soon after, Sakura and his mother appear out of nowhere to surprise him. They secretly arrange this get-together with Tadao, and trust me, that guy doesn't let go of his chances to get his hands on Masaki's mother and sister. Yet, none of them find his behavior suspended. And so, the family starts talking about Masaki's surfing skills along with the other boys. Sakura is utmost impressed with Kaido and his surfboard. She tells him about the time when Mamoru was a big part of her life. However, the depressed anime nerd leaves and shuts himself in his room to avoid any more chit-chats. In the end, Masaki tells Sakura about Kaido's condition and hopes she won't mind his rudeness, though they still don't know how to lift his mood. After some deep thinking, Masaki and Sakura decide to invite the boys on a shonen sightseeing tour. They think it will help Kaido forget about Magical Girl and focus on real life. She even does advanced research on every place to visit in Shonan. Apparently, some of these places are so well hidden that even someone like Yuta, who spent his entire life in Shonan, didn't know they existed. Their first stop is at a cave built after waves erode the mountain. Unexpectedly, Kaido finds a Mamoru cosplayer walking down the road, which drifts his focus from sightseeing to depression once again. He also tells Masaki to stop with the tour, as his mind won't budge from Magical Girl Mamoru. Yet despite his issues, Sakura continues her tour and enters the cave. It is said that anyone who prays inside will have his wish granted. This is just a famous folklore developed for children and couples. However, Sakura's dream of seeing Mount Fuji is miraculously granted by the gods. But even after all that, Kaido still doesn't want to hang out with anyone. Sakura thinks the poor guy must be hungry after being depressed all day, and so she takes everyone to a nice restaurant. Unexpectedly, the restaurant is filled with Mamoru memorabilia, as it was the place where Season 1 was shot. This just puts Kaido in a worse mood than before. Naturally, Masaki scolds his sister for bringing them here, but at that moment, the councils do anything. Later that day, Masaki decides they will visit Kamakura, hoping there won't be any more Mamoru around there. Yet, the opposite happens once again. Not only is the place filled with cosplayers, it is full of shops that sell the Magical Girl merchandise. Suddenly, Kaido overhears two little girls debating a merchandise. One of them thinks the toy is Mamoru's big sister, while the other girl thinks it's not. Naturally, Kaido breaks up the fight, explaining the toy they are holding is a character called Mei, and she is Mamoru's friend. He goes on and on about the series, telling the group how much he loves anime. However, Masaki later tells Kaido that his depression will end his surfing career. He can't go into the Forest Cup final without any practice. The anime nerd refuses to listen to a newbie who just started surfing a couple of years ago. He jumps into the ocean to prove him wrong. Yet for some reason, Kaido can't seem to ride a single wave. All of his super moves fail halfway, causing him to fall repeatedly. The boys then return Mamoru's surfboard and explain that he let Mamoru shine through surfing. Masaki even says that he can be the one who carries her name even if the anime ends. At that moment, Sakura rushes to the beach to perform the revolutionary change dance with Kaido. This gives him the confidence to cope with the sadness and get back to surfing. Once that happens, all of the boys start practicing. The way they surf tells Yuta that everyone is on even ground. Now, the winner will be the one who can take control of his emotions and execute with perfection. After that day, the next time these boys meet each other is at the Forest Cup competition in Tsurugasaki. Mori is the first one to jump on stage and remind everyone that they are standing on the world stage. His statement is not entirely false, as the 2020 World Champions were held there. Once his opening speech ends, Mori asks the audience to welcome all of the participants on stage. Naturally, everyone feels the excitement of participating in another tournament. However, for Masaki this is a bittersweet moment. He can't imagine they are moving forward with surfing without Sho present. While he's lost in these thoughts, the number surfer in Japan Fuke Rindu arrives on the scene. No one questions the top G for being late because his talents and skill far exceed the other. Even the owner of Fantasy Island and his wife, Shoko, can't wait to watch him perform. With everyone present, the commentators announce that this Forest Cup will be different from Orai in terms of rules. Instead of two players fighting each other head-on, the participants will surf in groups. Only the top 3 scorers in each group will have the chance to move to the next round. In this way, they will have 4 participants in the grand finale, making things more interesting. Minutes before the first round, Iwana tells Masaki that they have been spread out in different groups, although he knows that all of them will be able to reunite in the later rounds. During the first round, Fuke is the one who surpasses everyone by a mile. His perfect cutback at the edge of the wave earns him first position and praise from everyone watching. They rarely see an all-rounder like him in the ocean. Iwana and the others also pass the first round without any troubles, leaving only Masaki behind. But once the final lap of round 1 begins, everyone starts paying attention to the rookie from Orai. His incredible sense of balance is what stands out from the crowd. This shows when Masaki surfs above the wave, passing round 1 with flying colors. But things get interesting when Fuke matches with Yuta in round 2. He believes that his data is enough to topple Fuke and take his world championship title. He steps into the water with a striking confidence. However, that optimism ends when the waves don't turn out like he predicts. Naturally, both Fuke and Yuta wait for the perfect waves, since they have only one chance to display their skills. Yuta relies overly on his data to find that perfect wave. However, amid things, Fuke strangely decides to ride a shallow wave instead of waiting. Everyone, including Yuta, thinks he's crazy to attempt such a stunt in competition. Although Yuta's inexperience takes the better of him because Fuke executes his maneuver perfectly and makes it out of the wave. His style and aura resemble what Shu once had in his surfing. The commentators explain that waiting for the ideal waves can lead to defeat. Hence, Fuke decided to wing it. Yuta, on the other hand, still waits for the perfect wave to come his way. However, the cloak starts to run out, forcing him to make a gamble on a wave that might have good potential. With 50/50 odds, Yuta thinks that it's now or never. Unfortunately, his gamble doesn't pay off and the waves die early. Once Yuta reaches the shore, he realizes that Fuke wasn't betting on the wave. He knew that his skills were enough to ride any wave on the sea. This tells him that collecting data doesn't mean he can surpass others. Despite everything, Yuta exits the main event and hopes he redeems himself in the secondary rounds. In the meantime, Iwana and Mori go face to face in the ocean. Unexpectedly, Iwana's passionate and aggressive surfing is enough to outshine Mori. The billionaire's son doesn't even retain second position and has to move to the secondary rounds with Yuta. Out of all the battles, the audience is more interested in watching Masaki go toe-to-toe with Kaido. Naturally, the rising star from Ori wants to get back at his rival for embarrassing him in the first Forest Cup. However, their fight doesn't get interesting, as both surfers make it to round 3. As the commentators announce the lineup, Masaki learns he'll go against Fuke first. After that, the fight will be between Iwana and Kaido. However, Masaki is just excited to face the best of the best in a one-on-one battle. He quickly goes to introduce himself to the king of surfing, but he finds Fuke and Tadao having fun with the ladies. Still, Masaki doesn't let this stop him, and so he steps up to say hi. The newbie suddenly goes on fan mode, expressing how incredible Fuke's performance was in the last round. He tells the Red Scarlet that his style was similar to Shu, his best friend. He could also ride any waves that came at him with perfect maneuvers. Duke, however, ignores Masaki's excitement and asks not to be compared with others. He reminds Masaki that everyone is their own person. For a moment, Masaki feels like he was hung out to dry by the king of surfing, but Tadao and the dogs cheer him up. He claims that Fuke has always been like this with everyone. At the start of round 3, Masaki wins priority. Yet, people suspect the king was taking it easy on the rookie. However, even after having his pick, Masaki doesn't execute the wave perfectly. It is only thanks to his innate sense of balance that Masaki manages to complete the ride. Fuke, on the other hand, surpasses his score by leaps and bounds with just a single wave. This is the shortest round he's ever had. It is not until Yuta and Mori push him away to the secondary rounds that it becomes clear to Masaki that he lost. Still, the competition is far from over as Iwana and Kaido take the spotlight. Both of them intend to be the second to qualify and rightfully challenge Fuke. Unfortunately, Iwana leaves him in the dust and goes on ahead to face the legend. With the main event over, the audience shifts their attention to the secondary rounds from which 2 participants will join the grand finale. Masaki decides to show assertiveness and catch the first wave. He tries to execute a risky off-the-lip maneuver at a point where the wave is at its peak. His timing goes off by a few seconds, causing him to crash. He thought he would be able to fight with Fuke once again, but his journey this time ended in the semi-finals. Still, the commentators and the audience commend him for pushing past his limits. Unexpectedly, Yuta and Mori also fall behind their opponent and are kicked out of the secondary rounds. Now, all of their hopes are riding on Iwana. But naturally, Fuke doesn't give him a chance to think and catches the first wave. He willingly decreases his own speed so the water can engulf him. From the outside, it seems that Fuke will crash. However, Fuke enjoys the inside of the wave like it's a tunnel, and then comes gushing out with a backflip. Iwana tries his best to match his performance, pushing himself to the limit. Yet, there isn't any way he could beat Fuke's perfect score. In the end, the winner of the Forest Cup is the legendary world champion, with the others just watching from the sidelines. While presenting him with the trophy, Mori asks if there is anyone who took him by surprise. Fuke thinks for a moment and then gives a cold reply, claiming that surfing is a battle with oneself and the waves. The loss weighs heavily on everyone, but Mori losing in the semi-finals is something that has never happened before. However, he doesn't like sitting around and overthinking stuff. And so, hours after the competition ends, Mori gathers the boys to invite them to an intensive training week. For starters, Masaki agrees they can't wait or enjoy the moment. They lost to Fuke and need to improve their skills. Mori uses this excitement to sell his proposal to everyone. Unexpectedly, he wants them to forget about their families for a week and join him for a training week. The smooth talking tells Iwana that things are not as simple as everyone might believe. And that is exactly what happens, as Mori reveals they are going to Hawaii. Apparently, he was so pissed off at his loss that he already booked everything. The boys don't even have time to pack their normal clothes. However, Mori assures them that everything will be prepared for them at their hotels once they reach Hawaii. This shows how serious he's always been about being the champion. With that, the boys start their journey to the Aloha State. Naturally, the sights there are something the boys have never seen even in movies. The lively summer atmosphere makes one feel like surfing is in the air. Soon, the boys meet up with Tanaka, who also wants to join Mori for the training week. But first, he thinks the boys should visit all the memorable places and enjoy themselves at the message centers. Only then can the boys enjoy the waves of the North Shore, a beach famous for its tall waves. While they are talking, Masaki looks around only to find a dark statue in the background. Everyone aside from Yuta, Tanaka, and Mori doesn't know about the mysterious man. So, first they scold them for not reading history, and then Yuta reveals that the statue is of a man named Duke. Back in 1912, Duke was renowned for his swimming. He even won the Olympics that year and made a world record. His performance in the swimming world shocked the world. Thus, he started receiving invitations for various tournaments from everyone. During that era, surfing was only practiced in certain small areas. However, Duke took it upon himself to demonstrate surfing where he competed. In other words, he was the man who spread surfing around the world. After the short history lessons, the boys hit the road to explore Hawaii in one day. But first, Tanaka takes them to a shop with aloha shirts. He claims they need to dress accordingly for the streets. Their Japanese clothes might suggest another world war is starting. Hence, the boys pick patterns that suit their personality the best. Once the shopping spree is over, the boys buy food from multiple locations and share it with each other. Despite it being their first time trying foods like cream puffs and paninis, the boys think that this is the best food they have ever eaten. Plus, the clean and peaceful air of Hawaii makes them feel relaxed, making the food more tastier. The boys then spend the rest of the day engaging in all sorts of activities. Yet the best one is climbing on top of the Diamond Head. Masaki and the others thought that it would be like a stroll in the park. However, in reality, climbing the top is a full hike. However, the view after reaching the top makes everything worthwhile. Tanaka explains that Hawaii is peaceful. The air makes him feel positive and forget about their friend's strategy. Not only that, his high school is filled with top-class surfers. In the end, he believes Hawaii could be his last resting place. The weather, however, is as unpredictable as it can get. The sudden rain forces the boys to find quick shelter, but it also gives them the opportunity to enjoy a double rainbow. This is the moment when the boys stop complaining and start appreciating the rain. Tanaka then reveals that there can be no rainbows without rain. He hints that tragedies like Shu's death were necessary to make them a better person. Mori realizes these two have been through a lot over the past years, yet none of his words can provide them with comfort. So, he decides to use his money for that job. He brings the boys to his house and allows them to turn the place upside down. One of the first things he shows them is his huge surfboard collection. Naturally, Masaki and the others are impressed by how much money his dad has. However, Mori tells them that they haven't seen anything yet. He flicks his fingers together and boom, the ground opens up, revealing surfboards previously owned by legends. Not only that, he also prepared a wave pool for them just in case someone decides to surf indoors. Masaki, being his usual self, jumps in the pool without any regards to manners. He enjoys all the luxuries prepared by Mori, allowing the others to get comfortable as well. A few hours later, Mori Gate hires everyone to the chef's table and gives them the taste of premium sushi. The chiefs used meat that only royals were allowed to eat back in the day. The boys eat so much that they are forced to enter the jacuzzi. That is when Masaki asks Mori's reason behind giving them such a lavish trip. But unlike what they thought, Mori only does it for the sake of surfing. His goal is to increase the number of surfers around the world, and for that he can spend any amount of money. Still, he tells everyone to relax and leave the complicated stuff to him. With that, the boys hit their beds a little early to start practice in the morning. What they don't expect is that Mori, also called Fuke, went to Hawaii. However, he refuses to surf with the boys even after Masaki begs him to. He advises them to ask Shu's older brother Hayama for help instead of coming to him. In that moment, Masaki mistakes him to be Shu. However, he corrects himself, saying it can't be him. Tanaka though tells him that everyone makes this mistake at first, since Hayamichi Masaki remembers the night Shu told them about his older brother. He claimed that his surfing skills were unlike anything he's ever seen. Not only that, but his older brother was his teacher back in the day. And just as Shu described, Hayamichi is the coolest surfer, surpassing even Fuke. This is why he is respected by the world champion. Once their conversation ends, Hayamichi walks up to Masaki and speaks his name out loud. He unexpectedly reveals that Shu told him about his friends and boasted about their surfing skills. But Masaki corrects him, claiming they are best friends. However, Hayamichi finds it strange that Shu's best friend doesn't know about him. Still, he doesn't pull their leg for long and gives them a chance to show their skills. Unfortunately, Masaki can't wrap his head around Shu's and Hayamichi's resemblance. Although their faces are similar, their surfing skills are far off from each other. However, Masaki puts these thoughts to rest, reminding himself that they are here to train on the North Shore. He confidently paddles to catch a wave but falls off the board instantly. He assumes the Awana and the others might be able to ride the waves, but even they fail to stand on their boards. Once everyone is exhausted, the legends decide to steal the spotlight and show them how it's done. Fuke is the first to spot a wave with potential. He increases his speed tenfold right after standing to maintain his balance. The boys and everyone watching at the beach are left speechless by his performance. Hayamichi, however, doesn't hold back as well. He manages to catch an 8 feet tall wave but rides it like it is child's play. Watching from the sidelines, Masaki claims that Shu's brother has the same shine inside him as his best friend. It makes everyone want to keep watching. Yet, somehow his surfing is more graceful and full of technique. Soon, the two surfers come back to the shore, and frankly, Hayamichi is disappointed with Masaki and the others. He thought that Shu's friends would have something decent, yet they are all just trash. Still, he agrees to train them just for Shu's sake. The first one to get grilled is Yuta. Despite his perfect theory, he can't spend 2 seconds standing on the board. Once he comes back to the shore, Hayamichi compliments his theories but claims he proves them right. Not only that, he needs to put on more muscle and increase his core strength. The Wana, however, is pretty adept at fixing his center of gravity for the high waves to ride them successfully. However, his ride is nothing but sloppy. Hayamichi notices that Awana is always concerned about winning or losing. He advises him to look past those things and focus on delivering his best ride. Mori's style is also as refined as ever, but this is something that holds him back from being like Fuke and Hayamichi. The super blonde suggests that he should let himself be audacious, otherwise his style will be considered boring. Still, despite all the setbacks, the boys at least manage to ride the wave. Unfortunately, Masaki can't get the hang of things. He is the only one who's been wiped out this entire time. Though, he tells Hayamichi that he's starting to understand the waves. During his second ride, Masaki starts overthinking once again. His mind is filled with thoughts about Shu and his older brother having similar styles. He believes that after learning from Hayamichi, he can surf like Shu as well. Unbeknownst to him, Hayamichi notices him trying to copy their style. So, when he gets back to the shore, he asks Masaki his reason for surfing. Naturally, he reveals that watching Shu made him want to start, and his goal is to be like him. Masaki thinks that Hayamichi will validate his goal, but the complete happens, as Hayamichi tells the rookie he can never be like Shu. Deep down, Masaki knew that Hayamichi was telling him the truth. However, he expected him to be more considerate of his feelings. In the end, Masaki loses his appetite and leaves the group for lunch. He goes out at night to watch the ocean and calm himself, only to find Hayamichi doing the same. As the boys converse, Masaki asks about Shu's reasons to start surfing. He thought it would be some grand ideal. However, Hayamichi reveals that Shu was bored of everything. He and Shu are step-brothers, and when they first met, Shu was sitting quietly at the beach watching the ocean. He offered to take him surfing, and claimed that it would change everything. After just a few rides with him, Shu showed a big smile while riding the board. Just as Hayamichi said, his entire life changed in an instant. He also tells Masaki that he doesn't believe Shu is dead. He is confident in the surfer he trained, and aside from that he can feel Shu's presence while surfing on the North Shore. From that night onward, the boys focus on becoming surfers on par with Hayamichi and Fuke, but for that to happen, they need to train their core muscles and increase their stamina. Little by little, everyone starts to get the hang of riding big waves inside Mori's wave pool. Yet, Masaki still can't seem to balance himself on the board for long. Kaido, on the other hand, successfully learns to ride the wave. Mori and the others can't believe that a surfer who likes to be in the air would ride on the ground with such finesse. They also think Masaki has not been on top of his game lately. All of the criticism gets to head, forcing Masaki to take huge risks that put his life in danger. He chews more than he can bite and goes to ride on the biggest wave yet. However, the wave throws him off the board into the bottom of the ocean. While drowning, he recalls his conversation with Shu before the big incident. He used to tell Masaki that a lot of people would be sad if he died. Yet, he ignored his own advice and acted recklessly. At this point, Masaki starts to lose consciousness, but luckily, Fuke arrives on time to drag him out of the water. Once he's back on the shore, Masaki realizes that he can only be himself and create his style of surfing. The boys don't understand what he's saying, but Hayamichi gets it. After recovering, Masaki spends days trying to master Hawaii's ocean but fails every time. Until one day, he finally succeeds. The boys celebrate this success, but soon the wave engulfs Masaki inside it. Everyone thinks that Masaki is going to crash. However, inside the wave, Masaki feels like the ocean is telling him to go. He executes a maneuver similar to Fuke and earns his respect. After returning from the training camp, the boys completed their first year of high school. Masaki invites Yuta and Iwana back to Orai during the spring. He wants them to experience Orai's ocean and train with him once again. After the first few rides, Masaki claims that Orai's ocean is the best in the world. Iwana, however, thinks that Shannon's ocean is also on the same level. They both start fighting over their hometown like they used to. But this time around, Yuta breaks the fight, revealing that both oceans have a 92% surfer satisfactory rate. This means that both oceans are at equal footing. In the meantime, Yuta mentions that Kaido has been down ever since they came to Orai. Kaido ignores their comments and continues with the strange hand movements. Eventually, the boys think that something might be happening to the Mamoru franchise. Masaki brings him back to Earth from La La Land and asks what's wrong. Much to their surprise, Kaido reveals that Mamoru is getting a live-action Hollywood movie. The boys think that this news is great for the franchise, but for some reason, Kaido isn't sure about the movie. Suddenly, a giant wave attracts Masaki's attention, and so, he leaves the depressed anime nerd and focuses on surfing. Later that afternoon, Kaido finally reveals that he fears the cast won't be perfect. For a moment, the boys are taken aback, as they don't know what to say. However, Masaki comes up with a great reply, reminding Kaido that Mamoru will be the same no matter how she looks. This philosophy also applies to surfers. They can't copy each other's style even after trying for years. With that settled, the boys return to Masaki's house for a quick lunch. Unexpectedly, they find Fuke already eating at the dinner table. He claims that he is on a training session and will visit every ocean around the world. His mission is to ride any wave that comes at him and become the best in the world. Yuta agrees with his methodology, saying that practicing on different oceans will teach him how to adapt to situations. However, surfing isn't the only reason for Fuke's arrival. The boys ask him to reveal the mystery. However, Fuke says thanks to Masaki's mother for the food and leaves. Still, some of the boys think that Fuke was here to clap Masaki's mother since his father is never home. Though Masaki only cares about surfing, he and the boys spend the entire day in the ocean. Their goal is to reach the world stage for themselves and Shu. During their evening bath, Fuke reveals that he'll be traveling north with Bill. He wants to experience all of the waves in Japan and then visit overseas. Masaki, however, believes he will just surf his way to the other oceans. But instead of taking it as a joke, Fuke tells him to act like a man. Suddenly, Kaido mentions that Mamoru also visited the cities Fuke is planning to, and asks if he's on a pilgrimage. Naturally, poor Fuke is dumbfounded to what everyone is talking about. After a few laughs, the world champion reveals that his reason for coming to Orai was to inform them about the world tournament. The competition will be held in 4 years. However, the qualifying rounds are coming up soon. Fuke acknowledges everyone as their rivals and hopes they will compete. Naturally, Masaki is the first to stand up and announce his participation in the tournament. Soon after, everyone in the tub stands up and places their hand together. Masaki even throws in his left hand to fill up Tanaka's space. Just then Mori shows up to the scene. He was originally coming to pick up Fuke. However, now he has a good opportunity to show his resolve to everyone. After that night, everyone returned to their hometowns, but Masaki decides to spend some extra days with his parents. One morning, he randomly shows up at his middle school to recall the days spent with Shu and Tanaka. His teacher catches a glimpse of him standing outside and comes to greet him. He has been watching every tournament to support them. He thinks that Masaki and Tanaka will be the best surfers in the world one day. Before heading back to Shonan, Masaki visits Fantasy Island to reconnect with Shu's surfing board. He takes it back to Hayama, the city where his best friend grew up. As a sign that he's finally gotten over his loss, Masaki releases the surfboard into the ocean, claiming that the ocean will keep them connected forever. Years later, the boys represent Japan on the world stage. Everyone competing is at Fuke's level. However, the audience wants Masaki's innate sense of balance in action. Unbeknownst to him, a man watching in a distance removes his optics and reveals himself to be Shu. He had disappeared from the world due to his family problems, but was always connected with everyone through the ocean. He watches Masaki paddle towards a giant wave and conquer it through his skill. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe the channel for more plot-filled recaps.